Welcome to Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey, the fine arts podcast where I get to talk with composers, performers, authors, visual artists, filmmakers, and others in the arts. Before we begin, please hit the like, follow, or subscribe buttons. It's a very easy thing to do, and it goes a long way towards supporting the channel, and it really does help a lot. Hey, if you or someone you love plays guitar or ukulele, please consider visiting my website at www.rogerhumphrey.com and looking at the many things I have to offer. Much of it's for free. If you like what you see, please take a moment to subscribe. I promise, I won't send you any spam, just occasional updates. Marc S Perlman is an attorney who has become an author, and his debut novel, The Riddle of the Trees, has just been published, and I am so very pleased to welcome him to the show. Hi, Marc.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, nice to meet you. First off, what's the book about? Can you give us a thumbnail sketch?
Sure. The Riddle of the Trees, it's an espionage novel of sorts. It's about a regular American guy, Jack Miller, who's going on a trip to Eastern Europe to see the village where his father and grandparents were from. And he wants to specifically try to understand, by going there, what caused a rift during World War II, during the Holocaust, between his father and his grandfather, this enduring rift. So he goes to Eastern Europe, and while he's there, he also happens to go to a forest, which is on the border of Poland and Belarus. He starts seeing strange things there. He then proceeds to go to Belarus, and while there, he meets his guide to take him to the villages. Of course, it's a beautiful woman, and he starts to fall in love with her. And while he's there, he does learn what caused this rift that makes him question his own identity. And he learns from Anna what it's like to live in this police state, the fear of living in a police state. He also learns that she's part of the Belarusian underground. And against his better judgment, but spurred in part by his growing affection for Anna and this new understanding of his family, he follows her on a reckless mission into the forest. They discover something earth-shattering there, and he then proceeds to have to flee Belarus with the fate of nations literally in his pocket.
Well, that sounds intriguing. I have to say, number one, it's one of my favorite genres. I fell in love with the entire genre when I read my first Ian Fleming book back when I was in middle school, and then later Robert Ludlum and his books. And the thing I liked about Robert Ludlum's books were they were just so detail-oriented. So I have to believe, as a practicing attorney, you're kind of detail-oriented as well.
I am, and that is both helpful, and it can also be a problem because I much of my research for the book, I actually went on a trip to many of these locations, and that's where the idea for this sprung from. So that was very helpful in my research, actually being there and working with the environment. And so there was that, but I also obviously had to do significant research on Belarus, the security services, Russian security services, the histories of different villages during the Holocaust, NATO presence along the border. There was a lot of research that went into it. And as an attorney, I like to make sure I have all my facts. As an author, though, I have to also take a step back and say I'm not writing a dissertation here. I'm writing a work of fiction, and I have to, at a certain point, just fill in what I can't learn from research, fill that in with my own imagination and my own artistry, and then also differentiate those places where I'm willing to use my own imagination and those places where I really do want to just stick to the facts that I've learned. For example, there are some torture scenes that take place in this famous prison in Minsk. And with that, I didn't want to deviate from what I read in books and articles about Belarusian prisons. I felt like that should speak for itself, those details. But in other places, I certainly let my imagination go a little wild.
So, how difficult was the research? I mean, if you're getting into Belarusian politics and security services and things like that, I got to believe that some of that's kind of sensitive to some folks.
You mean in terms of locating the material, or
Locating the material, and were you able to interview people? And
I didn't do any interviews. I was looking at books and articles,
ah,
and actually with the Belarusian security service, there's not a lot there. So the most I found was actually the most detailed information I found in terms of the structure was actually in Wikipedia. With the Russian security services, there are several books that I was able to find and read. In terms of Belarusian history, and specifically the history since the end of the Soviet Union, and as the president took power and consolidated power over the last, I guess, 30 so years now, there are some good books about that. And then with the prison scene, I found one book which is specifically about this one prison and what goes on there. It was written by, I believe had been a BBC correspondent. So I relied heavily on that. And there were some other articles about the Belarusian gulag, as they call it. So there is information out there, but with Belarus, you're not going to typically not going to have as much information as if you're looking at Russia, where there's certainly plenty of documentation.
and I have to believe that the location is really another character in the book. You have to develop that a little bit as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, the location certainly is. I tried creating this sense of fear of living under this regime, and also just having been there, there were certain things that I noticed, which I tried to incorporate in the book. And I don't know if it's Belarus or the former Soviet republics in general, but people just don't smile at you. And I had a sense on the street, in New York, I live in New York, and it has a bad rep as not being a friendly place, but generally people are pretty friendly. But when I was there, maybe it was just that I was a foreigner. I was very obviously a foreigner. People were very wary of even smiling at me. And so there is this sense well, something was a little different there. And I tried to incorporate that. And I just intentionally created a very moody ambiance. A lot of the book takes place in this forest on the border of Poland and Belarus. It's on the Polish side, it's the Białowieża forest, and in Belarus, it's the Belovezhskaya forest. And my apologies to anyone who's listening who speaks Polish or Belarusian or Russian for butchering these pronunciations, but that was a very interesting place. It's called the last primeval forest in Europe, and it has European bison, which I didn't know existed, and it's this very interesting forest situated right on the border between NATO and some democracy and what had been called the last dictatorship in Europe, of Belarus. And I had traveled there, and that certainly has a mood to it, has a feeling, and I definitely enhanced that. I mean, I could have set the book, I could have set those scenes on a sunny day in August where the deer smile at you, but I chose not to do that. It was late November, and it was cold and windy, and there were men with guns. So,
Yikes!
certainly
Well,
created the atmosphere that
how
way.
did your journey from being an attorney to becoming a writer? How did that come about?
I've always enjoyed writing, going back to as far as I can remember. But my last formal writing class was junior year of high school, and I've been an attorney for 25 years now, so that says something about how long it's been. But I always enjoyed it. I think I have a decent imagination, but I also am very practical. So when it came down to it, and I had to make a career choice, I sort of thought, well, obviously I'm going to be an attorney because being a writer is, it's not it's not a very lucrative profession for most people. So I was very pragmatic, went to law school, but I never lost the desire to write. So over the years, I've written some short stories, and those are sitting in my desk drawer. I think most of them rightfully so. Some of them I think are good. But writing a novel always seemed like the challenge I wanted. And I think also as a lawyer, I was at a big firm initially, and I've switched job a few times, but I started to romanticize the life of the writer as I was just working late nights at a big law firm. I thought, wouldn't it be great to be a writer where I can just get up and write stories and have set my own schedule? And so I romanticized it, I think. And I had a few ideas for novels, very different genres, but the espionage genre was certainly one that I have always enjoyed, and I thought it seemed like an accessible entry point to writing a novel. And so I had thought a lot about it, and at a certain point, I just, even though I was an attorney, I felt I have to do this, and um, I didn't really know where to begin. But I went on this trip to Eastern Europe, and I actually went to this forest, the Białowieża forest, and I rode a bike across the border. And here I was between NATO and former Soviet Republic and dictatorship, and I thought, this here is a place for a book. This is the scene. I need this. And from that point on that trip, I was devising this plot as I went, and it grew from there. And I got back. This was 2011, November 2011. I started writing. I got about maybe 30, 40 pages in, and then I had these big scenes in my head, but I really couldn't develop the connective tissue to pull them together and make a complete work. And um, I let it linger for about 10 years. And then finally in 2021, I said enough is enough. And I just went for it and finished the book within 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
The first draft, I should say.
Sure. So how did the, the romanticized fantasy of the writer's life change when the rubber met the road?
Well, I'm still working as a lawyer, so
Sure.
I haven't really lived the full romanticized life of the writer. But it's certainly hard work. I think every writer knows that it's difficult. And that it took me 10 years to finally get back to it. I mean, I thought a lot about the book, but it was I guess it was the hard work, and you need diligence, and you need to just stick with it to get it done. And I I know some writers like to wing it, and I realize I can't do that. That might be the lawyer in me. I like things to really be laid out ahead of time. So for me, the trickiest part when I really got down to it, and again, I said I needed to get these connective tissues to connect the large scenes that I had in my head. Um, it was I had to sit down and outline it, and that was the toughest part. And then I spent about 3 or 4 weeks just thinking about nothing else but this book. I would lie in bed at night thinking about it, and in fact, there was one crucial piece of information I needed for this book, which is how does the KGB agent eventually figure out how the underground is communicating? And I was going down these rabbit holes, more and more complicated rabbit holes of plot. And one night I was in bed and I thought, you know what? This one character's in prison. They can just torture the information out of him. And boom, I cut the Gordian knot. And then from there, I was off to the races. But once the plot was done, then the writing was actually a lot of fun. And that was sort of what I imagined the writer's life to be like. I'd write maybe 3 or 4 nights a week because I have a young kid, and I'd have to wait till he was in bed, and I would write. And that was the fun part. The writing was really enjoyable.
So do you write every day?
No, it was again, it was maybe 3 or 4 days a week I could write when I had the time. It was
Gotcha.
usually 9 to midnight, 3 or 4 days
Yeah,
a week.
I've talked to I've interviewed several writers, and honestly, everybody's different. You know, I'm looking for a common thread, and the only common thread I find is that they feel compelled to write. That there doesn't seem to be much of anything else. So
Yeah,
so some of them are extremely disciplined and will write every morning, others. Another one, she writes novels, and she has a general idea of what the novel is going to be about, and she says there are times she says I don't know what these characters are going to do or what they're going to say until she says I can't wait till tomorrow to see what they're going to do. I mean, she just absolutely seat of the pants.
yeah,
And I mean, I'm more like you. I couldn't do it that way. I know that I've never, I don't write, but I remember being in college, and for me the hardest part about just writing a paper in college was just doing the outline. But I also knew that once the outline was done, the paper was going to basically write itself. That the grunt work was in that stupid outline.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah. That's certainly the way I felt, and I'm a very visual person, so it was sort of like a movie in my head, and then it was just trying
ah,
to transcribe that onto the screen, when the computer screen, when it was time to write.
So where did your characters come from? Are they a composite of real people in your imagination, or where did the
It's
characters
a
come?
lot of them are composites of people I met while I was traveling. The main character, I've been asked this before, who inspired the main character, and I don't have such an inspired answer. The main character I say is me, just more daring and more prone to making bad decisions. And the other characters were a lot of people I met, but of course I embellished them. One of my favorites is this: when I was waiting for my guide in the forest in Poland, I was approached by this. I think the best way to describe him is the town drunk, and he was extremely friendly. I'm from New York, so I immediately recoil at people who approach me, but he was very friendly and pretty drunk. And he became an important character. He became what called him the elf, and he became a man who lives in the forest but has other uses for the book. And so I took people that I met and included them. Obviously, this isn't a travel log, but so
Sure.
created other characters, and I went to in the book, go to other places that I didn't travel to. But certainly my trip was a good jumping off point for this.
So how did the book change from your first outline and the way you first envisioned it to what the end result tended to be?
The book was just about a man going to see his family roots in Eastern Europe. He wasn't going to explore this rift between his father and his grandfather. There was no Holocaust element. It was just a man going to see his roots, where his family was from, and then he gets enmeshed in this espionage, this underground organization. And I eventually, when I wasn't getting much positive results from agents, I went to an editor, and she read it. She said the plot is great, but he needs a reason to be going to Eastern Europe beyond just seeing his family roots. It's just not believable, she said. And I said, it is believable because it's exactly what I did. She said, I don't care what you did. It's not believable. She said, there needs to be a reason. It doesn't need to be a big reason, but a little reason. And I thought more about it, and I said, this is going to be a big reason. And that's where I built this family dynamic. And it leads to this big reveal later on about what actually did happen to cause this rift in his family, and it draws the Holocaust into it. And I think that adds a certain element to the book. So that was I'd say the main change from the first draft. Additionally, I intentionally had left the book somewhat ambiguous at the end, and I thought that was it added some dramatic flair. But the early readers, namely my family, my wife, and a few others, said this just leaves us cold. We want more solid resolution at the end. So I went back and I developed the ending a little more. But I think both of those helped. Both of those comments helped a lot. And I say of editors that they can be extremely annoying, but extremely essential, because I think it really, that comment, which bothered me to no end at first, it really helped me develop the story a lot.
Now, are you with a traditional publisher or a hybrid, or
I'm
how
with a
are you
hybrid
publishing?
publisher.
I'm sorry?
I'm with a hybrid publisher.
Okay. So how does that work? Can you explain that to folks?
So with the hybrid, it's I put some money in, they put money in, and they ultimately have the final word on the editing and the cover, and they help with some of the marketing. But I have more skin in the game. They have some skin in the game, so they're clearly incentivized to work with me on this. But it's as you'd expect a hybrid. It's not fully self-publishing.
Uh-huh.
I don't have final say on things, but I liked it a lot because this being my first novel, I was happy to be working with professionals who knew what they were doing and could guide the process. And I thought that was for me a lot of comfort rather than going the self-publishing route. I mean, if I had received an offer from one of the major traditional publishers, yes, that would have been nice too. But I did enjoy this process with Kohler.
Yeah, So I have one of the other authors that I've interviewed recently is fully self-published, but she still has to uh, um, hire an editor. She hires proofreaders. She's got people on staff, basically, or on speed dial, I should say, probably a better way of putting it. That she calls and says, "Okay," and you get that from Kohler, your publisher. They provide those services. That's part of it. Is it editing and proofreading?
Yeah, they do. And I think because I had hired an editor myself earlier, by the time I got to Kohler, I think that actually helped me getting accepted by Kohler
Oh,
because the book was in very good shape at that point. So I didn't need any real conceptual editing. It was more line editing and copy editing at that point. So I ended up working with two editors, the one I had hired initially, and then once I got to Kohler, they had their editor look at it as well. But at that point, it was more of dotting the I's, crossing the T's sort of thing.
I know I, my writing when I was in school, I could have used a proofreader because not only do I make the mistakes, but I don't see them. I become blind to them when I'm proofreading my own stuff,
Sure.
and I can remember having other people just take. What's that? 30 seconds into it. Well, what does this mean? How does it? Oh God, and you realize you've misspelled a word or you use a basket full of commas where you didn't really need them. And
Yeah. I have to say, by the end of the process, I was sick of reading my own book, and I would start. I actually started when I was reviewing the final proofs. I would sometimes read backwards to back to the front, chapter by chapter, because I realized if I started at the first chapter and you know exactly what's going to happen, I just started reading too fast and not catching things. But if I broke it up and read it in reverse, essentially, then I was more attuned to what I was reading. But at this point, I don't think I'll ever read the book again because every time I look at it, there's something else I wish I could have changed. And I'd say there's at least a dozen, whether it's a few words here or remove a paragraph there. I just need to let it go. It's out there. I'm proud of it, and move on to the next thing.
a friend of mine who's a painter said that she's never finished with a painting. She just gives up. She's it's never done. She just gives up, moves on. Which, I'm a musician, and I totally understand everything that you said. I've got several albums out, and I haven't listened to any of them in probably 10 years. I couldn't possibly care less. You sit there and I go through the editing process and you play a 3-minute song and you listen to it for 3 hours and it's like
I think with me, it's not that I couldn't care less. Maybe I still care too much about it. That's
ah.
why I just don't want to look at it because I'm just still too critical. So, but I certainly understand just wanting to leave it behind.
Put it in the rearview mirror and get to the next one. So, is there going to be a next one?
There will be a next one. It will not be a sequel to this. It'll be a different genre. There's two other books I'm considering, which I've been sort of jotting notes down. They're very
Uh-huh.
different genres. One is, I would call it a low-tech sci-fi, and the other is more of a fantasy about old New York. So very different types of books, both of which I'm very excited about. The difficult thing will be making that decision, which one do I want to then devote so much time to and leave the other one behind for a while. So I still am torn between the two, but I'll have to pull
Something
off
will
that Band-Aid
reveal
eventually.
itself. Something will happen, and it'll just kind of reveal. Something will float to the surface, I'm sure. And it's kind of seems to be the way these things work. So, um, I ask this question to a lot of my guests, and this is kind of a what if thing, but we see in the last couple of years, we see artificial intelligence just kind of getting its grubby little fingers all over things. And I know in your professional world of law, I mean, it's it's been utilized and misused, and
Yeah.
it's made some really interesting gaffes from time to time. But it's still there. Do you see a use for it in writing? Not necessarily writing the story itself, but maybe in the way you do your process.
I don't think I will be using artificial intelligence. Maybe I naively haven't thought enough about it in terms of writing books. I've certainly thought about it, the implications in my professional life, because you've seen even major law firms misusing it and citing cases that don't exist. Um, in my writing, I haven't thought about that at all. I want my writing to be my writing. The one time I did use it, Kohler asked for other potential titles for the book, and I was having trouble with it. So I was sitting at the dining room table with my family, and my wife typed in to ChatGPT the general plot of the story, and it produced, I thought, a pretty good title. We didn't end up using it, but that was the only time I've come close to using AI for anything writing related. But um, I haven't thought of how I would use it, and I don't really intend to use it.
I didn't
Um,
I didn't know if it could be used for like early proofreading uh, or early editing suggestions and things like that. I
You know,
mean I don't know.
I assume it could be. How good it would be, I'm not sure, but I'd be very wary to do that because I just don't want, first of all, I want to do that myself and then get an editor and have them do that, do their job as an editor. But there's also, I think, so much concern around AI that you have to attest, at least with Kohler, you had to attest that nothing was written by AI. And I just
Ah,
wouldn't want to get in a situation where, yeah, I wrote the first draft and myself, but then AI edited it. And you get into a gray area there, and I want to avoid that. And I think writing and I think the arts should try to avoid artificial intelligence and
yay!
remain a human endeavor. I think that's the beauty of it.
So, um, are you a paper and pencil writer, or are you a computer writer, or how do you?
I wrote the bulk of this on computer. Some of the short stories I wrote, I wrote paper and pencil or
Do you
paper
have a
and pen.
preference?
Um,
Do you
I
see,
would
do,
like
do
to
you see a
think of
difference?
myself as a paper and pencil writer, but in practice, it's just so much easier to have a computer, especially with a large novel where you start shifting things around. Um, I think it's just easier. But I do notice that I think differently if I'm typing or writing.
Yeah, that was going to be my next
I
question. Yeah.
definitely approach it and think differently. And I'm my next novel, I romanticize and I'd like to think I'm going to do it with paper and pencil, but we'll see what happens when I actually sit down and start getting hand cramps.
I have friends of mine who write music, and they are they kind of fall into two camps. They either are paper and pencil writers, or they play everything. They do everything in the box. They play on a keyboard, and the computer translates it. And I'm kind of in the middle of that. I kind of just use. I place my notes on the computer. I put them where I want them, but so it's because it's faster, and I can edit on the fly if I play a wrong note or something. I can do that without having to scribble it out. But the idea of sitting down and just playing and having it, it doesn't. I find that I play what's convenient. I don't. You're right. And what I'm comfortable with as opposed to what the music would require. I got to believe that if you're writing, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That you're gonna write the words that are the best words for that particular sentence in that particular paragraph. And
Although I think maybe on the computer, there because of the ease of changing it, it
uh-huh.
might be easier just to put down words and then knowing it's easy to go back and edit. Whereas on paper, I think I am generally a little more cautious about what I write, trying to find the right words. But these days, at the end of the day, it's going to end up on computer anyway. Uh, I'm not sending a typewriter written manuscript to, mailing that to any agents at this
Those
point.
days are behind us. So.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. I really, really appreciate it,
Thank you
and
very much.
I look forward to reading the book. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, so I'm looking forward to reading the book, and because, again, like I say, it's a favorite genre of mine. And,
Please read it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I feel very confident that I will enjoy it. So, but thank you for this. And when the next book comes out, shoot me a note, and we'll get you back on. So, all righty?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'd like to thank Marc S Perlman for taking the time to come on the show. If you'd like to know more about him or get his book, you can find a link to his website in the descriptions below. I'd like to thank you too for taking the time to listen. If you enjoy these podcasts, please share your favorite episodes with your friends and introduce them to Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey.